and welcome to the warehouse. Please stand as we get going this morning. We're going to ask the Lord to let His presence among us be known.
We've gathered in your name, we're calling out to you. Your glory is like a fire, awakening desire, we will burn our hearts with you. You're the reason we're here. You're the reason we are singing. Open up the heavens, we want to see. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your hearts, filling every part of our praise. Your presence in this place, your glory's on our face. We are looking to the sky, singing like a crowd. You're standing with us now, Lord, unveil our eyes. You're the reason we're here. You're the reason we are singing. Oh, open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your hearts, and filling every part of our praise. Open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your hearts, and filling every part of our praise. Show us your glory. Show us your power. Show us your glory, Lord. Show us your glory. Show us your power. Show us your glory, Lord. Open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your heart, and filling every part of our praise. Open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your hearts, and filling every part of our praise. Show us your glory. Show us your power. Show us your glory,
Be seated. Welcome to the warehouse. Thank you so much for joining us for worship this morning. We want to wish you a very, very happy Mother's Day this morning. As we go through the service, feel free to stop over there and get some coffee and drinks, and we even have decaf is what the sign says, and there's some pastries over there. So as we go through the service, we're very casual in here, so if you need to go get something, feel free to do so. Special for the ladies in our church this morning, make sure on the way out you pick up a cookie that we had made for y'all. So all ladies of the church, grab one on the way out. Also, if you didn't take advantage of the warehouse photo booth on the way in, we'll be glad to take your picture with family members, friends, whoever you're here with today you want a picture with. We can certainly do that right outside after the service. Most of your announcements are in the bulletin. If you didn't pick one up on the way in, you can pick one up on the way out. The main thing I want to remind everybody is we're having church in the park next Sunday. If you come here, nobody will be here. You're welcome to come, but nobody will be here. You can come out here and steal our internet, sit in the parking lot like some people do. But next Sunday, 9:30. 9:30. We do it at 9:30 instead of 9 because it takes a while to set up all that equipment down in the park. We'll put this on social media this week and remind everybody. But next Sunday, 9:30, right behind the courthouse. We do this a couple of times a year. Always have a good time. Great opportunity to invite somebody to church. If you have somebody in mind that you've been thinking about inviting, tell them to come hang out with us in the park. Super simple, easy. They don't have to come to a church or a strange building, anything like that. So next Sunday morning, 9:30, behind the courthouse. We'll hope to see y'all there. Bring a chair or a blanket to sit on, and we'll have some refreshments down there and do church in the park. And like I say, we'll remind y'all on social media during the week. In a second, we're going to watch a special video for Mother's Day. And then after that, we're going to take up the offering. As the offering goes around, there's going to be buckets and baskets. Buckets are loose change and bills. We use that money for local missions. Baskets, you put your regular offering to the church, or what some fancy people call your tithe. You can also give electronically through Venmo. The address is on that slide, but if you ever want to give, you can just do a search for Camilla United Methodist Church, and that will pull up. We're going to watch a special video now, created in-house by Pastor Andrea. So this is our special Mother's Day video here for the warehouse.
Because she always helps me do stuff.
I love my mom because she is so nice to people and she loves people, just like me.
Why do you love your mom?
Because
Because you do.
I love my mom because she's very sweet, very kind, and very loving.
I love Mama because she's like. So what do you say?
I love my mom because she gives me.
I love my mama because she gives me love.
I love my mom because she loves me.
I love my mom because she is always there for me, and she loves me, and I love her.
Why do you love your mom?
I love my mom because she's sweet and she loves me and she didn't throw my hamster out. Because I eat the sweetest mom every day. I love my mom because she gives me food and water to survive.
I like my mom because she takes care of me. I love my mom because she buys me food and she takes care of me.
Because she's sweet and she gave me my life.
I love my mom because she loves me. She's nice to me and gives me a lot of stuff. I love my mom because she gives me money.
Look, Jen, look right here. Tell me why you love mommy.
Because I like it.
Because you like it?
Because she's sweet and nice and I love flowers.
My mom because she gave birth to me.
Alright.
Because she takes me shopping.
Oh. Your mom.
She cares for me and she supports me in anything and everything.
I should be shopped in a Target because every time she wants to, I gotta get money, earn money, my money because I love God.
I love my mom because she buys me toys.
See ya.
And Pastor Andrew, we're going to put that on social media this week, right? So if somebody, like you say, oh, I got to call so-and-so because they weren't here, we're going to put it on social media. So if you saw somebody's child or grandchild in here, don't fret. We'll put it up on our social media this week, so tell them to check out that. Again, we're going to take up the offering on this next song.
It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. So
On the sixth day, God looked down on Adam in his planned paradise and said, I need a nurturer. So God made a mother. God said, I need someone who feels deeply and loves fiercely, whose tears flow just as abundantly as their laughter, whose heart is as warm as their ability to guide and set limits as strong. I need someone whose influence on those that they nurture is eternal. So God made a mother. God said, I need someone who can hear a sneeze through closed doors in the middle of the night, 3 bedrooms away, who can kiss the boo-boos, scare away the monsters under the bed, clean up the middle of the night accidents. So God made a mother. God said, I need someone who can ride the roller coaster of anxiety, hope, fear, and pride with an outward appearance of calm assurance as she sends her child off to his first day of school, and again 13 years later when she sends that same child off to college. I need someone who will buy the school supplies, drive for the field trips, help study for the history test, fill out the permission forms, clap from the back row of the spring musical, and help coach a sport she's never played. So God made a mother. God said, I need somebody who realizes that children need to be allowed to grow, gain confidence in themselves, and be encouraged to be independent individuals and accept the path they choose. Somebody who realizes that their job is one where the better they are, the more surely they won't be needed in the long run. Somebody whose breath will be taken away when they visit their first newborn grandchild in the hospital and their daughter looks at them with loving eyes and says, I hope I can be the kind of mom you are, Mom. So God made a mother.
Good morning. All you beautiful people, I am. Today we are supposed to be celebrating Mother's Day. And I'm dedicating this day to my mother. Now, I like to say that my mother was perfect, but I've already told you she's a little bit like Elvira, and we were like the Edit family. So we didn't always take the turn of our no, we're not sounding funky. Told you. Let's try that again. Yes. Welcome to Mother's Day. Hello, yes. Okay, so I'd like to share a few things from my family and my life and celebrate my mother, and hopefully you as parents will celebrate some of the joys that you've had and some of the stories you've had when you go to lunch this afternoon about things that your mother did with you. I remember that we used to have that saying, you know, we are the children your mother warned you about. Well, I had that mother you mothers were warned about. She did have a bit of a thyroid problem, and when that thyroid kicked in, I promise you, not even God could live with her. She spent some time in a special institution until they removed it and put on medicine, and then it was a little bit easier, I promise you. My mother was a nurse. She grew up in the 30s and 40s in South Africa. She grew up during segregation, and believe it or not, she was one of the first people in her household to go to college. And she went to nursing school and lived on campus, and learned to be a nurse, and then met my father, who was a remarkable man in his own right, and then they started to have children. Apparently they had a couple of miscarriages until I came along, and I believe my mother dedicated me to God and said she would allow her third child to become a pastor if God would just bless her with children. So that's the nice part. But There were other things that made my mother unique. My mother was a feisty person, and she didn't like to take no for an answer, and it was her way or the highway, and most of the time it was her way. Her and my father got along extremely well, and they taught me a lot in life. I didn't grow up in an easy life. Some of my life we lived on the mines in South Africa, in kind of like West Virginia mines and the mining communities. Some of the time we lived in very, very poor conditions, and there was a time we were semi-homeless. We lived in the back yard of somebody's house, and I actually slept on the porch for about a year. The porch is that front of the place where you sit and play, and I had a sleeping bag, and I used to like sleeping there until it rained, and then the rain would soak the sleeping bag, and it wasn't that much fun. So I had some hard times, had some good times. Very often when we were living like that, my mother would take us to the hospital, and we'd spend the night in the hospital while she worked, and people would work around with her around that. So the first thing I would say my mother was to me a teacher. She taught me the value of an education. How many of your boys and girls are young going to school? Believe it or not, you are going to need that education. More and more in this world today, there's more and more stuff you have to use. And in fact, in the next couple of years, McDonald's and Walmart will become pretty much automated. They'll go the way of Amazon. And so they're not going to need very many unskilled labor. But with that, my mother took a keen interest in my education, and that was important to me because I am dyslexic. That means I'm a creative speller. And I can creatively spell mother in more ways than you can only imagine. I'm very good at Scrabble. I can spell it in more ways. Unless you challenge the word, I do pretty good on Scrabble. My wife hates playing Scrabble with me because she spells them the way they do in Webster's. I spell them the way they do in Webster's and Oxford and anywhere else you can find it in South Georgia. So. But while I was studying in school, I did well for a while, and I have an extremely good memory until I reached about standard 1, or the 3rd grade is what you would call it, and they found out that I was falling behind. By the 8th grade, the principal said I was mentally retarded and that he would refuse to sign the paperwork for me to go to high school. At that point, my mother got me tested. Now, in America, you get your testing for free. Well, somebody picks up that $3,000 worth of testing, and you can get special help. And I got tested. It was a 2-3 day process, and when we got to the end of it, the educational psychologist sat me down and he said, "Son, we have a problem." And I said, "What's that? I'm stupid?" He said, "No, son, you ain't stupid. In fact, you have an IQ of 153 or close to 135. You ain't stupid. That's not your problem." I said, "Well, then what's my problem?" He said, "You're lazy. We got a cure for that. And it ain't got nothing to do with," and so they did. He said, "You have dyslexia as well." So they put me with a teacher, taught me how to learn special skills and tools like I before E after C, and just different things I could spell, and how to make sure you get your E's and your B's and your D's all in the right place. And I did a lot better. And then I got very smart and I married my wife. If it wasn't for my wife, I wouldn't have a doctorate today or any other degrees, because I would write up my papers and she would spell them correctly and help me rewrite them in English that everybody else spoke. So that helped me a lot. But my mother also refused to listen to what other people said about me and sent me to a 7-day Adventist school where I got some help. My mother believed strongly in education and fought very hard that all 3 of our siblings got a good education. My sister is an accountant by trade, and now she's retired and goes to the spa 3 times a week and gets a little rub-downs and plays in the clay and gets massages and gets her nails done. And tough life. But before that, she was an accountant. Now she's just a connoisseur of massage and spas. Tough life. My brother, on the other hand, started out as an auto mechanic and did rather well. And he worked for a place called Remron from Ryder, which is a tobacco company, and they make tobacco products and wine. Well, one day he gave his life to Jesus and got saved and called me reverse charges. Spent about 2 hours, $300 of mine, explained to me how he gave his heart to Jesus. And then he quit that job because he didn't think it matched with his lifestyle, with his relationship with God, and started to do gardening. You call it landscaping. And he studied that, and he now makes special landscapes for like banks and hotels and for hospitals and then people's gardens, and he does extremely well with that. But all of us, we've done really well in education and in various fields. My brother is a very, very hands-on, can't sit still kind of guy. So all he does is outside all day long, plays in people's gardens, and then he comes home and guess what he does? He plays in his garden. That's what he loves to do. So that's us. But what I want to point out, my mother was really, really big in us being educated. She would go to the PTAs and the PTOs and everything else. She served on the school boards, and she worked very hard to make sure that our educational system was strong. So, number one, my mother was big on education. Now, if you look around the room, how many of your mothers are very deeply, deeply involved in your education? They come to your sports, they come to listen to you sing, they come and look at your walls, and they come and look at what you're doing. They come and spend time talking to your teacher about your progress. If you boys and girls have a mom that does that, raise your hand. If your mom has visited your teacher, you have an awesome mother. You need to tell her sometimes, that's awesome. There are some mothers that will never ever show up at anything their children do. And they couldn't tell them who your teacher was. Now, I'm going to tell you the honest truth. When I got to high school, I couldn't keep up with my children's high school teachers, and I come up there, and I would say to them, I've come to see Scott, I'm going to have lunch with her. And they said, do you know where she is? And I said, no, I don't belong to the school, but you know where she is, and I hope you do because I need her. And they said, well, do you know who her teachers are? And I said, seriously? I'm a father, what do you think? And so we would have lunch with them like that, but I couldn't always keep up with them. But I didn't know what our grades were, and I always knew where they were doing academically and how they were doing with number twos, the social life. Secondly, my mother, by trade, was a nurse. I'm not sure which was the better nurse, her or my father. That's kind of debatable. I just remember one time my sister sitting on the bed, and my dad had this big old pliers, put out this tiny little splinter out of her finger, and she was screaming blue murder and fighting and kicking, and I think he was going to tear limb from limb just to get the splinter out of her finger, until he decided maybe just let my wife do it. My mom didn't do it, she took her to the emergency room and they did it. My mother seemed to be a very, very good nurse with other people. And she did a wonderful job. She could get them the right place, the right time, and be as cool as a cucumber on a hot, sunny day. But lo and behold, if I showed up with a little boo-boo, she'd lose it. She'd run around, she wouldn't know what to do. And so she'd haul me off down to the emergency room and they would fix me, and they would sit and laugh and laugh and laugh all day long. So in nursing, she was a very good nurse, but just not with us. But she did do other things that I thought was strange. I know that very often she would clean up after we threw up. I know that very often she would sit up all night when we had colds or the flu. Unlike America, we don't always have the emergency rooms and the ways to get health care. So sometimes the only health care you had was your mother sitting there with you, making sure that she was with it. So my mother spent a lot of time taking care of our health, making sure we got our shots and those kinds of things. Boys and girls, question new this morning. How many of your mothers have taken you to the hospital? How many of them have cleaned up after you've thrown up or messed up. Don't raise your hands. This is creepy. Okay, somebody raise their hand anyway. How many of you have had your mothers wash your sheets after they've been messed up? Or you sweated all night? How many of you had mamas sit up all night with you, holding with you because you just didn't feel better and you cried all night long because you had a sore ear? And pretty awesome mamas in this room, aren't there? Okay, the next one I'd like to point out is she's like a counselor. Some of the best advice we ever get as youngsters are from our mothers. Now before I go into this, I know that there are some parents, because they're broken or are unable to provide always a healthy counsel that comes from broken families, and there seems to be a disconnect. I'm not going to point out names and stuff, but I know there's a lot of kids that go into foster care, and I know there's a lot of kids that have had struggles, don't always know how to deal with relationships. My father grew up in a house where actually grew up in an orphanage for the first 12 years of his life, and all he knew was that his mama was dead. He didn't know he had any parents for the first 12 years of his life. Just let that sink in. And then when he turned about 12 years old, both his parents showed up and said, "Hey, we're alive. We want you to become a Christian or join a bar mitzvah." My dad was like, "Wait, back up a bit. You know, I got live parents that actually now want to be involved in my life. Where were you the first 12 years of your life?" So he always struggled with intimacy and trusting people, and he never ever got around that. He also had difficult times saying things like, "I love you." I don't know how him and my mother ever got married, because he really struggled with those kinds of things. I remember many times he would lie in the bed for 4 or 5 hours, sometimes the whole week, and just in a complete depression because he's trying to wrap around his mind around how much God loved him and his need to love his children as himself. So with that said, our parents give us some of the best advice we ever can have. And I will go straight to the point that maybe teenagers might like. My parents taught me, well, maybe before teenagers, my parents always taught me to be fair. My parents always taught me to be kind. My parents always taught me not to start fights and to follow the rules of the Bible. They're a good way to live your life. My parents also taught me how to deal with bullies. Any of you struggle with bullies at school or around your life? Or eventually you'll have a bully. Maybe not at school, but in the workplace, and you're going to have to learn how to deal with them. The sooner you learn how to deal with bullies, the better off you are, because they're all around. And I also believe that my parents taught me how to, this might be difficult to like myself. I remember I used to have severe acne. And I said, Mom, if I could just get a good plastic surgeon, I'd be all right. And my mom said, there's a story about a man that started chipping away. By the way, this was before Michael Jackson. And eventually he chipped away everything on his face till he had nothing left. And the point is that you need to love what you got. And she always pointed out to me that if you like yourself, if you really, really like yourself, other people will like you. When I got to high school, I saw what she was talking about. We used to have 2 cheerleaders. One was a 6'5" boy. No, he couldn't do cartwheels. No, he couldn't do somersaults. But he had an awesome personality. He liked who he was, and we could do all sorts of cheers together because he had this ability to lead. And then there was this nice, short Italian girl. She didn't make Blondie, or she didn't make Barbie doll, or she didn't make, any of these glossy magazines. But she had such a wonderful laugh, and she had such a wonderful way of seeing the world that everybody wanted to be her, and everybody wanted to date her. She was just such an awesome young girl, and she had the best ability to make jokes out of nothing, and they were usually pretty funny. And she was the other cheerleader. But we followed her and loved them, not because of the way they looked, but we loved them and cared for them and thought they were great because of who they were. And my mother pointed out to me in counseling, or as mothers do, that each and every one of us is specially made by God. And each and every one of us has something special that we and only we can offer the world. And we need to find out what that is and do it to the best of our ability. Now, I'm not the world's greatest preacher. I struggle with it. But I soon found out as a young boy, when I was in school, about gay age, we used to sit behind the bicycle shed and the toilet in Heidelberg and in the sun because we didn't have lunch. It's kind of hard to explain, but we'd be sitting outside in the bushes. And so to entertain ourselves, we would tell each other stories or jokes, and we had to make them up from scratch. You couldn't use other people's material. And if they were really good, we would vote. And then at the end of each lunch, then one of us would be the winner and the rest of us were like, okay, well, we can do some great this time. And so I have spent many a day working on my storytelling ability and my ability to tell jokes. And some of them were terrible because I'm a 5-year-old kid. But we had a lot of fun practicing, telling all sorts of stuff. Sometimes they were science fiction, sometimes they were out in the bush, sometimes they were fighting the Indians. But I found out pretty quickly that it was a way you can tell people stories that would make them feel better about themselves. And so I've really worked very hard to try and perfect that. I don't know if you thought about yourselves, but how many of you sing really well? Have you ever thought that might be a special gift? Or maybe you have the ability to just sit and listen to other people. Maybe you have that ability to be the friend that calms everybody down. Or maybe you're that friend that gets everybody into mischievous trouble, you know? You have that way of talking to everybody to try something out just one time, even if it may get you into trouble. You know, maybe you have that ability to do math. Or maybe you have the ability to write stories. Maybe you have the ability to play music or paint. Each and every one of us is wonderfully made. And one of the things my mother taught us to be in tune with that and appreciate what we have in our lives. Another thing that I found out, that my mother was never really my friend. Like, you know, we got plenty of friends. We don't need any more friends than our parents. But she was like a friend in the sense that I could trust her with her advice. Now, I could tell you that I remember getting advice with dealing with bullies and people that try to beat me up. I remember getting advice about, you know, failing spelling tests and going to see the principal every Friday. In fact, I knew the principal on a first name basis because every Friday I would have 1 or 2 words wrong, or 5 or 10. But that's not where she really helped me. Where she really helped me was when I reached my teenage years. And I was an awkward teenager, and I didn't think I was that really good looking. And I didn't know how to talk to pretty girls because my tongue would turn into leather and my knees would turn soft, and I start feeling really goofy, and then I start acting goofy, and then I just want to run away and die. And my mother helped me with a lot of that. And then, you know, to help things make it really easy, I had acne. And I struggled with that until she tried to point me out that, you know, those other young people have self-perceptions that aren't healthy, that they struggle with. My mother was there for me when I was in the military. And things got really, really hard. And she would listen to me and pray for me. And I think sometimes I probably told her more than she needed to know. But she never ever gave up on me. Have you ever had a mother where you could sit down on her edge of her bed. This is for the older kids, and maybe your mother's not here. And tell her about your addictions, about that boyfriend that used you and abused you, or that girlfriend that played you. Maybe you've been able to talk to her about some of the deepest pains where people have hurt you, and you've had to learn some really hard lessons about how cruel people can really be. Maybe you've experienced some abuse and you're trying to adjust. Doesn't that make that mother a little bit more awesome? And then finally, the reason I think my mother is the greatest person, or one of the greatest persons in my life, or the hero in my life, is because she knew she couldn't give me everything I needed by myself. She knew she was fallible. She knew she was just as broken as I was. And she needed Jesus just as much as I did. And very, very often my mother would point to me that yes, she doesn't have the answers, but Jesus does. And that I need to trust him as much as she does. My mother was a staunch Methodist and Catholic, and we would go to church, and there was much that the preacher talked about that made no sense to me, still does. There was much in the Bible that I don't understand, still don't. But what I have found, that when I'm hurting, and when I'm happy, and no matter what situation I'm in, God seems to be able to break through and give me a word or remind me something my mother said about trusting in God. So I think one of the reasons my mother was great in my life is because she gave me Jesus. How about you? Would you say one of the greatest reasons your mother's great in your life is because she tried to give you Jesus? Now, no mothers are special. Some mothers might do this more than others. Some might do it like my mother in Alva kind of fashion. None of us are perfect. And so maybe the most loving and kind thing you can do for your mother is give her some slack. You know, she's got a lot going on in her life. But more importantly, I think the nicest thing we can do when we're sitting around the dinner table is to tell her thank you for all that she's done for you. Let us pray. Almighty God, thank you for mothers, because where would our church be? And where would our children be if it wasn't for godly, earth-bred, broken, and loving mothers? Amen.
Thank you again for joining us. Please stand with us. We'll close out the service. Remember, on the way out, all the ladies in the church, please grab a cookie. Stay around for pictures if you want, and join us for church in the park next Sunday morning, 9:30.
You surround me with
worship. I'm glad we're no longer slaves to fear. As children of God who are fearless, I ask that you go and make your mother feel special. Go and enjoy today. Allow the love of God to flow through your mothers and fathers, now and for all eternity. Amen.